Boss demoted me after I trained my replacement. I stayed silent. Then this happened. The familiar hum of fluorescent lights, the smell of cheap coffee from the break room, the chorus of typing from cubicles. It was all so normal. I had no idea everything was about to change. At 45, I'd built a comfortable life. Not extraordinary, but stable. Technical project manager with a team of 12 under me. The mortgage on our suburban home was half paid. My wife Diane had recently started talking about early retirement plans, something I'd barely given thought to. I had at least 20 more working years ahead of me. "Robert, got a minute?" Mark, my boss, poked his head into my office. "Of course," I said, closing the quarterly report I'd been reviewing. Mark wasn't at tea alone. Behind him stood a young man, early 30s at most, in a perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "This is Jason Bennett," Mark said, his smile too wide. "Harvard MBA, worked at McKinsey for 3 years. He is joining our department." Jason's handshake was firm, confident. "Pleasure to meet you, Robert. I've heard great things." I nodded politely, though I couldn't recall Mark ever mentioning a new hire. "We're expanding the department," Mark continued. "Jason will be working closely with you. I want him to learn everything you know about our operations." "Everything?" I asked, a strange uneasiness settling in my stomach. "Everything," Mark confirmed. "Think of it as mentorship. You've been here the longest, know all the ins and outs. Who better to show him the ropes?" It made sense. I'd trained new managers before. The company was growing. Our stock had risen 15% that quarter. I'd been asking for help managing the increasing workload. This was good news. For 3 months, I dedicated myself to training Jason. I showed him every process, introduced him to every client, explained every quirk in our outdated systems. I forwarded important emails, included him in all meetings, and stayed late explaining the history behind decisions that shaped our department. Jason was smart. I'll give him that. He asked insightful questions, took detailed notes, and charmed everyone he met. The team liked him. Clients appreciated his polished presentations. Even Diane was impressed when he and his wife joined us for dinner one evening. "He seems like a good guy," she said after they left. "A bit intense, maybe." I should have noticed the signs, the private meetings between Jason and Mark, the way information began flowing around me rather than through me, how Jason had started leading team meetings while I sat quietly, nodding approval. Then came that Friday. "Robert, can I see you?" Mark called from his office doorway. Jason was already seated inside, looking solemn yet somehow expectant. "We've been evaluating the department structure," Mark began after I sat down. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "The board wants to streamline management, focus on innovation, new perspectives." I knew where this was going before he said it. "Jason S. taking over your position, effective immediately." The words hung in the air. 15 years of loyalty, countless weekends sacrificed, family vacations cut short for emergencies, all reduced to a simple transition of power. "Your expertise has been invaluable," Jason offered, his sympathy so practiced it felt rehearsed. "I couldn't have learned the role without you." Mark finally looked at me. "We're reoffering a severance package, 3 months from salary. We'd like to announce the change on Monday." I sat perfectly still, my mind racing through options, arguments, pleas, then settling into a strange, detached calm. "I understand," I heard myself say. I stood up, walked to my office, and began methodically cleaning my desk. Family photos, the industry award from 2018, the Boston Red Sox paperweight my son gave me years ago, each item placed carefully into a cardboard box someone had already placed beside my desk. I didn't slam doors, didn't make a scene, didn't demand answers or threaten lawsuits. I simply nodded, cleaned my desk, and walked out. The drive home was a blur. I sat in our driveway for nearly an hour, unable to go inside and tell Diane. What would I say? How could I explain that after 15 years I had become obsolete? That evening I told her I was taking on a special project, working remotely for a few weeks. The lie came easily, surprising me. I just needed time to figure things out before burdening her with this failure. Monday morning, I still got up at 6:30, showered, dressed in my work clothes, and left the house with my briefcase. But instead of going to the office, I drove to a coffee shop across town, opened my laptop and began searching for jobs. The betrayal burned silently inside me, but I wouldn't let it consume me. Not yet. First, I needed a plan. 2 months later, he was begging for my help. The routine had become almost comforting. Wake up, kiss Diane goodbye, drive to the same coffee shop, order the same black coffee, open my laptop, and scan job boards. 2 months of this charade was wearing me down, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. Robert Miller, too much experience, overqualified, looking for someone more junior. The rejections piled up, each one nearly identical. 15 years at one company had become a liability, not an asset. At 45, I was too old for entry-level positions and too expensive for management roles competitors could fill with younger, cheaper talent, like Jason. "Coffee refill, Mr. Miller?" asked Elaine, the barista who now knew me by name. I nodded gratefully. "Thanks, Elaine. Any luck today?" she asked, eyeing my laptop screen. "Not yet," I admitted, "but something will turn up." Her smile was sympathetic. Funny, my brother was out of work for 8 months before finding something better than his old job. Sometimes these things take time. 8 months. My severance would run out in 4 weeks. Our savings would cover another 3 months of mortgage payments if I cut everything else to the bone. After that, my phone buzzed. Diane. "Hey, honey," I answered, forcing cheerfulness into my voice. "Robert, I am at Walgreens, and I saw Chuck from your office. He asked how you were handling the restructuring." "What restructuring?" My stomach dropped. I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Robert, are you there?" "I'll be home in 20 minutes, I said quietly. The drive home felt like a march to the gallows. I found Diane sitting at our kitchen table, hands clasped tightly together. "I called your office," she said, her voice trembling. "They said you no longer work there." She asked, and the look in her eyes, confusion, hurt, betrayal, broke something inside me. I collapsed into the chair across from her, the weight of my deception suddenly unbearable. "They let me go 2 months ago," I admitted, the words bitter on my tongue. "Jason, the guy I was training, he took my position." 2 months? Diana's voice rose. "You've been pretending to go to work for 2 months?" "I didn't know how to tell you," I whispered. "I've been looking for jobs every day, but no one wants to hire someone my age." "So you lied to me. Every day for 2 months you walked out that door with your briefcase, kissed me goodbye and went—" "Where exactly?" "A coffee shop downtown." Diane stood abruptly, pacing the kitchen. "I don't even know what hurts more, that you lost your job or that you didn't trust me enough to tell me." "I was ashamed," I admitted. 15 years at that company, and they replaced me with someone half my age after I trained him myself. We were supposed to be partners, Robert, for better or worse, remember, not just when things are good." She was right, of course. The shame of being replaced had been eclipsed by the shame of my deception. "I am sorry," I said, knowing how inadequate those words were. Diane sat back down, her anger seemingly deflated. "What are we going to do, financially, I mean? And I have 1 month of severance left. Our savings will cover another 3 months. I'll find something before then." "And if you'd done a tea?" she asked quietly. I had no answer. That night, lying awake beside Diane's sleeping form, memories flooded back. The Christmas party ID missed when our system crashed. My son's championship game I watched through video clips because I was handling a client emergency. My daughter's college drop-off, cut short because of a deadline. All those sacrifices for a company that discarded me without a second thought. My phone lit up at 2:17 a.m. A text message. "Robert, it's Mark. We need to talk. Urgent. Can you come in tomorrow? Just to consult." I stared at the message, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. 2 months of silence, and now they needed me. At 8:30 the next morning, rather than going to my usual coffee shop, I found myself walking through Axiom AS familiar doors. The receptionist looked surprised to see me, but waved me through. Mark's office looked different, messier, more frantic. He jumped up when I entered. "Robert, thank God. We'd be having some issues with the Henderson account." "The Henderson account," I repeated flatly. "Jason's been handling it, but there are complications. You know Henderson better than anyone." "And where is Jason?" I asked, glancing around. Mark looked uncomfortable. In meetings all day. The thing is, Henderson is threatening to pull their business. 7 million in annual revenue. We can lose them. I sat down slowly, a strange calm washing over me. So you fired me, but now you want my help. Not fired, Mark corrected quickly. Restructured. And we decompensate you as a consultant. Good money. Through the glass walls of Mark E.'s office, I could see the department I built, functioning without me. My team, former team, hunched over their desks, stress evident in their posture. What exactly happened with Henderson? I asked. Mark sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. Jason changed the implementation schedule without consulting them, then missed 2 milestone deadlines. Now they're reclaiming breach of contract. I knew immediately what had happened. Henderson's CEO was old school, valued relationships over efficiency. I had spent years building trust with him, knowing his company's workflow couldn't handle rapid changes. So you want me to clean up his mess? I said, not a question, but a statement. Just some guidance, Mark pleaded. Off the books. Then we can discuss a more formal consulting arrangement if you're interested. I stood up, straightening my jacket. I am not interested. Robert, please. No, I said simply. Good luck with Henderson. Walking out for the second time felt different. Not defeated, but liberated. They needed me more than I needed them. My phone buzzed again as I reached my car. A different number this time. Robert, it's Jason. Can we talk? I dismissed Jason's call. Whatever crisis they were facing would have to be solved without me. The weight I'd been carrying for 2 months suddenly felt lighter as I drove home. For the first time since my dismissal, I didn't feel like the failure. When I pulled into our driveway, Diane's car was there. She was supposed to be at her dental office until 5 CE. My momentary relief evaporated. Something was wrong. I found her at the dining table, surrounded by papers, job rejection letters I'd hidden in my briefcase, bank statements, our mortgage document. I called in sick, she said without looking up. I needed to understand exactly where we stand. I sat across from her, feeling naked under her scrutiny. Why didn't you show me these? She held up a stack of rejection letters. I was handling it, I answered weakly. Handling it, she repeated. Like you handled telling me about losing your job. I winced. I deserve that. This isn't about what you deserve, Robert. Her voice softened slightly. It is about us facing this together, instead of you carrying it alone. She pushed a spreadsheet toward me. Diane had always been better with numbers, planning. She'd calculated our financial runway down to the day. We have exactly 127 days before we have to sell the house, she said, assuming you find nothing. The clinical precision was somehow more frightening than uncertainty. 127 days until we lost everything we built. Axiom called me today and I said, they were having problems with the Henderson account. Diane looked up sharply. And? I turned them down. You what? Her voice rose. Robert, we need money. Why they wanted free advice not to hire me back, as I explained. Mark hinted at potential consulting work later, but it was just a desperate attempt to fix their immediate problem. Diane rubbed her temples. Maybe that was a foot in the door. A foot in the door to what? More exploitation. They'd squeeze whatever knowledge they needed, then discard me again. So your pride is worth more than our house, she shot back. The accusation stung because it contained a grain of truth. Was I being prideful, or was I finally standing up for myself? I'll find something else, I insisted. Like what? You've been looking for 2 months with nothing to show for it. Her words hung in the air between us. We rarely fought, and never like this. I can go back there, Diane, I said finally. Not after what they did. She stood up, gathering the papers. Then you better figure something out fast, because I am not losing our home because you were too proud to take work where you can find it. She walked out, leaving me alone with the spreadsheet and its merciless countdown. 127 days. My phone buzzed again. Jason, again. I silenced it. That evening, as Diane and I moved around each other in strained silence, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Opening the door, I found myself face to face with Carl Donovan, my first boss at Axiom, now retired for 5 years. Robert, he said warmly. Got time for an old man? Carl had been a mentor during my early years. When he retired, we promised to stay in touch, but life, work specifically, had gotten in the way. "Carl, what are you doing here?" "Heard what happened," he said simply. "Thought you might need someone to talk to who has been there." I hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. Diane appeared from the kitchen, her expression softening at the sight of our visitor. "Hi, Carl, how lovely to see you," she said, giving him a hug. "Hope I am not interrupting dinner," he said. "Not at all," Diane replied. "Join us. I made plenty." Over lasagna, Carl shared stories from his post-Axiom life, teaching part-time at the community college, consulting for startups, volunteering with a business mentorship program. "Losing my job was the best thing that ever happened to me," he said, surprising me. "Took a while to see it that way, though." "They forced you out?" I asked. I'd always assumed he'd left on his own terms. "Restructured," he said with a knowing smile. "Sound familiar?" After dinner, as Diane cleared the dishes, Carl lowered his voice. "Mark called me yesterday. Asked if I'd talk to you about helping with Henderson." I stiffened. "You came here to convince me to bail them out?" "No," he said firmly. "I came to make sure you understand your value. Axiom is imploding, Robert. Not just Henderson. 3 major accounts are threatening to walk. How do you know this? I still have friends there, good ones." He leaned forward. "The board is starting to question Jason's appointment. Mark oversold his capabilities." A petty part of me felt vindicated. "That is not my problem anymore." "No, it is not," Carl agreed. "But this situation is an opportunity if you were smart about it." "What kind of opportunity?" "That's the kind where you don't work for idiots who don't value you," he said bluntly. "Henderson isn't just unhappy with Axiom. They're looking for alternatives." I frowned. "Are you suggesting I poach Axiom's clients?" "I am suggesting you recognize your worth," Carl corrected. "Henderson trusted you, not Axiom. Same with Westridge and Phoenix Systems. They worked with Axiom because of you." The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. I'd never considered striking out on my own. "I wouldn't even know where to begin," I admitted. Carl smiled. "That says why I am here. First step is deciding what you want, Robert. Not what Axiom wants, not even what I think you should do. What do you want for the next chapter of your life?" I glanced toward the kitchen where Diane was pretending not to eavesdrop. 127 days until we lost everything, unless I created something new. "I want control," I said finally. "I don't want my future in someone else, as hands ever again." Carl nodded approvingly. "Then let us make that happen." The next morning I woke with purpose for the first time in months. After Carl left, Diane and I had talked late into the night. About risks, about possibilities, about reinvention. "If we were going to do this," she said, "we go all in. No more secrets. No more carrying burdens alone." She was right, as usual. I made 2 phone calls before breakfast. The first to my bank, arranging a meeting to discuss a small business loan. The second to Carl, who agreed to meet me for lunch. By noon I had a rough business plan drafted. Nothing fancy, just the bones of an idea. Carl looked it over as we sat in a quiet corner of his favorite diner. "Project management consulting," he mused. "Solid start, but you were thinking too small, Robert." I frowned. "Small is all I can manage right now. I need income." "Fast, what made you valuable at Axiom wasn't just project management," Carl said. "It was your system, the way you integrated technical requirements with client priorities. That methodology you developed for the Henderson rollout. Pure gold." He was referring to a framework ID created 3 years ago when Henderson's legacy systems kept crashing during implementation. ID developed a phased transition approach that became the standard for all our complex migrations. "That was just common sense," I shrugged. "No," Carl insisted. "That was intellectual property, IP you created that Axiom has been profiting from ever since." I hadn't thought of it that way. The framework was just something ID cobbled together to solve a problem. "This is your differentiator," Carl continued, "not just managing projects, but your methodology for handling complex system migrations without business disruption." My phone buzzed. Mark again. Third call today. I silenced it. They were getting desperate, Carl noted with satisfaction. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a text. Robert, board meeting tomorrow. Need to discuss your return. Name your price. Mark. I showed Carl the message. He chuckled. Perfect timing. Now you have leverage. I am not going back, I said firmly. Of course not, Carl agreed. But you might take a meeting, under your terms, as a consultant with your new company. By the time I returned home, I had a clearer vision and a name. Transition Systems. Simple, descriptive, focused on what I did best, helping companies navigate complex technology changes without disruption. Diane was waiting, eager for updates. As I explained the plan, her initial skepticism gave way to cautious optimism. It could work, she admitted, but we still have bills due next month. That and's why I aim an meeting with Mark tomorrow, I said. Why not to go back but to propose a consulting arrangement, on my terms? And if he says no, then I'll approach Henderson directly. The words came easier now. Carl thinks they'd jump at the chance to work with me independently. Diane squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. Scared, but proud. The Axiom building looked different as I walked through the lobby the next morning. Smaller somehow. I wasn't there as an employee, but as the owner of Transition Systems, even if that currently consisted of just me, a business plan, and a half-finished website. Mark was waiting in the conference room, along with Jason and 2 board members I recognized. Their relief at seeing me was palpable. Robert, thank you for coming, Mark began, professional but eager. Thous have been discussing the situation with Henderson and believe... Before we start, I interrupted calmly, I should clarify something. I am not here to discuss returning to my old position. Mark's smile faltered. I think I'll find our offer very generous. I am here representing Transition Systems, I continued, sliding business cards across the table. They were simple, printed at the local copy shop yesterday afternoon. My consulting firm. Silence fell over the room. Jason looked pale. You're consulting now? Mark asked carefully. Specialized in complex system migrations and client transitions. Exactly what you were struggling with on Henderson. I kept my voice neutral, matter of fact. We were hoping to bring you back in-house, one of the board members said. Jason could use your mentorship. I allowed myself a small smile. I spent 3 months mentoring Jason. Now my expertise is available on a consulting basis. Jason fidgeted uncomfortably. The Henderson situation is more complicated than you expected, I finished for him. I am aware. Carl Donovan briefed me on the details. Mark's eyes narrowed at the mention of Carl. What exactly are you proposing, Robert? I opened my portfolio and laid out my terms. 3 months of consulting, focused solely on stabilizing the Henderson account. Triple my former hourly rate. No direct reporting to Jason or Mark. Complete authority over the implementation schedule. This is highway robbery, Mark sputtered. This is the market rate for specialized expertise you desperately need, I corrected. Henderson is threatening to pull $7 million in annual business. Phoenix Systems is on the fence. Westridge has already started looking at competitors. The board members exchanged alarmed glances. Clearly, Mark hadn't shared the full extent of the crisis. How do you know about Westridge? Jason demanded. I ignored him. My proposal is on the table. You have until the end of business today to decide. Or what? Mark challenged. I stood, gathering my materials. Or Transition Systems will be unavailable. I have a meeting with another potential client this afternoon. It wasn't entirely true. The meeting was with my bank, but they didn't need to know that. Robert, be reasonable, Mark began. The older board member raised her hand, silencing him. We'll need to discuss this privately, I nodded. Of course, you have my number. Walking out of that conference room, back straight and head high, I felt a surge of power I hadn't experienced in years. Not arrogance, not revenge, just the quiet confidence of knowing my true value. My phone rang before I reached my car. Not Mark, as I expected, but a number I did not recognize. Is this Robert Miller of Transition Systems? A man's voice asked when I answered. Yes, it is. I tried to sound like this was a completely normal call for my established business. John Henderson here. Carl Donovan suggested I call you directly. I understand you've started your own firm. John Henderson, CEO of Henderson Technologies, Axiom S' biggest client. That S correct, Mr. Henderson. Good, he said briskly. Ivy about had it with Axiom. Let us talk about how you can help us straighten out this mess they've created. I leaned against my car, a smile spreading across my face. I'd be happy to discuss that. When would you like to meet? The Henderson meeting changed everything. John Henderson didn't just want my help with the current implementation crisis. He wanted transition systems to take over the entire project. Axiom doesn't understand our business, he said bluntly. You do. ID left with a signed contract and a retainer check substantial enough to extend our 127-day countdown to well over a year. When I handed it to Diane that evening, her eyes had widened. This is real, she whispered. We're really doing this. We're redoing this, I corrected her. 3 months after being unceremoniously dismissed from Axiom, I sat in my home office, now officially the headquarters of Transition Systems, reviewing applications for my first hire. I needed someone with technical expertise to complement my project management skills. The growing client list demanded it. Axiom had reluctantly accepted my consulting proposal, though Mark made it clear he considered it temporary. Once we stabilize Henderson, we'll discuss bringing you back permanently, he said as if offering a favor. I hadn't bothered correcting him. My work at Axiom now represented less than half my business. Phoenix Systems had followed Henderson S lead and signed with Transition Systems. 2 smaller clients referred by Carl had come aboard last month. My phone rang, Carl checking in, as he did most Fridays. How the empire building going? He asked cheerfully. Hardly an empire, I laughed, but we're regrowing, interviewing for the technical position next week. Any promising candidates? A few, I admitted. There's an interesting application from Lisa Chen. She was at Technodyne for 12 years before they outsourced her entire department. Experienced then, and probably grateful for the opportunity. Like me, I agreed. There is something powerful about hiring someone who knows what it's like to be discarded. Speaking of discarded, Carl G's tone changed. Heard the latest about Axiom? I try not to follow the gossip. This isn't TT gossip. Jason S. out. I sat up straighter. What? The board meeting yesterday. They showed him the door. The Henderson implementation was the final straw, even with your help stabilizing it. I should have felt vindicated, maybe even pleased. Instead, I felt strangely hollow. That was fast, I said finally. That's corporate America for you, Carl replied. The same system that chewed you up did the same to him. Difference is, you built something new from the experience. After hanging up, I sat in silence, turning this news over in my mind. Jason was out. The man who had replaced me had himself been replaced. The cycle continued. The doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Diane was at her dental practice, so I went to answer it myself, surprised to find Mark standing on my porch. He looked haggard, the confident executive demeanor replaced by something more desperate. We need to talk, he said without preamble. I hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. He followed me to the kitchen, declining my offer of coffee. Jason S. gone, he said, confirming Carl S. news. I heard. The board wants you back. Vice President of Operations. Full control of the technical division. Double your former salary plus stock options. The offer was substantial, far more than I'd ever hoped for at Axiom. 6 months ago, it would have seemed like a dream. I'm not interested, I said. Mark's composure cracked. Robert, be reasonable. This is an incredible opportunity. For whom? I asked quietly. For me or for Axiom? For both of us. The board is breathing down my neck. 3 major clients have left. Henderson is only staying because of your consulting work. If they go, my job is next. And there it was. Mark wasn't concerned about me. He was worried about himself. I'm sorry about Jason, I said, meaning it. But I am not coming back. So why not? Mark demanded. Is this about revenge? Making us pay for letting you go? I studied him, realizing he truly didn't understand. This isn't about revenge, Mark. It's about building something that can be taken away from me. Everyone can be replaced, he said darkly. Even you. That is exactly my point. At Axiom, I too am replaceable. At Transition Systems, I am essential. Mark shook his head in frustration. You're turning down security for risk. That is insanity at your age. Is it? I gestured around me. In 3 months, I've built a growing business with clients who value my expertise. I set my own hours. I am hiring my own team. What exactly about that sounds insane to you? It won't last, he insisted. Small consulting firms rarely survive past the first year. Maybe, I conceded, but I'd rather fail on my own terms than succeed on someone else's. After Mark left, I called Diane to tell her about the offer I'd turned down. I expected resistance, perhaps an argument about security versus risk. Instead, she surprised me. Good, she said firmly. You don't belong there anymore, Robert. You've outgrown them. That night, as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset, Diane handed me a gift box. What is this for? I asked. 3 months of Transition Systems, she said. It deserves a celebration. Inside was a custom plaque. Transition Systems founded 2023 because sometimes being replaced is just the beginning. I felt a lump in my throat. You really believe in this, Demoted? I believe in you, she corrected. I always have. Monday morning brought another surprise, an email from Jason Bennett requesting a meeting. My instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity won out. I agreed to coffee at a neutral location. He looked different, humbled, less polished. The expensive suit remained, but the confident demeanor had vanished. Thank you for meeting me, he began awkwardly. I know you have every reason to refuse. What can I do for you, Jason? He took a deep breath. I need advice about what to do next, about how you rebuilt. I studied him, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agendas. Found none. Why ask me, after everything that happened? Say because you are the only person I know who survived what I am going through, he admitted, and came out stronger. 1 year to the day after cleaning out my desk at Axiom, I sat in the new offices of Transition Systems, surrounded by my team of 8. We'd outgrown the home office 6 months ago, moving into a modest but modern space in a business park across town. The conference room buzzed with energy as we finalized our strategy for onboarding our largest client yet, Westridge Global, now completely free from Axiom's grasp. Robert, the migration timeline looks tight, said Lisa Chen, my technical director and first hire. We might need additional support for Phase 2. Agreed, I replied. Let S look at bringing in a contractor. Maybe... A knock on the glass door interrupted us. Diane stood there carrying a cake decorated with the Transition Systems logo. Behind her, Carl Donovan beamed proudly. Sorry to interrupt, she said, but some anniversaries deserve recognition. The team broke into applause. 1 year, one incredible, terrifying, exhilarating year of building something from nothing. Speech, called Raj, our youngest developer. I hadn't prepared anything, but looking around at these people who had taken a chance on a fledgling company, many of them discarded by their former employers like I had been, the words came easily. 1 year ago, I thought my career was over. I began. I'd been replaced, discarded, deemed irrelevant after 15 years of loyalty. I could have given up, almost did. I glanced at Diane, who smiled encouragingly. For instead, with a lot of support, I realized that being replaced wasn't to the end of the story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. Transition Systems exists because sometimes the best transitions aren't the ones thrust upon us, but the ones we choose for ourselves. As cake was distributed and conversations resumed, I stepped into my office to check messages. Among them was a calendar reminder, my quarterly lunch with Jason Bennett. Our relationship had evolved in unexpected ways since that first awkward coffee meeting. After hearing his genuine remorse and confusion about his role in my dismissal, he'd been led to believe I was being promoted, not pushed out. I'd found myself offering advice about starting over, not out of pity but from a place of understanding. The corporate machine that had chewed me up had done the same to him, just as Carl had predicted. Jason hadn't joined Transition Systems as he'd initially hoped. Instead, he'd taken my advice about leveraging his Harvard MBA and McKinsey experience in a different direction, starting his own management consulting practice focused on ethical leadership and corporate responsibility. An ironic pivot, perhaps, but one that seemed genuine. Our quarterly lunches had become a tradition, part mentorship, part mutual support group for survivors of corporate politics. The afternoon found us at our usual table in a quiet bistro downtown. Jason had brought a gift, a framed article from Business Weekly profiling Transition Systems as a rising star in the tech consulting space. "Quite a year," he said, raising his water glass in toast. "From cleaning out your desk to building all this." "It has been a journey," I agreed. "How is your practice going?" "Growing slowly," he admitted. "It is hard convincing companies they need ethics training until after they've faced a scandal." "You will get there," I assured him. "Building something worthwhile takes time." Jason studied me curiously. "Do you ever regret not taking Mark's SVP offer? The security would have been nice." I shook my head. What looks like security is often just an illusion. Axiom laid off another 50 people last month. "I heard," Jason nodded soberly. "Mark S. gone too." This was news to me. "Since when?" "Last week. Board finally had enough. Stock yes down 30% year over year." I felt a complex mix of emotions, not schadenfreude, but something more nuanced. The company I devoted 15 years to was struggling, and part of me still cared. "Any word on who's replacing him?" I asked. "Rumors say they re-looking externally. Complete leadership reset." Jason paused. "Some people mentioned your name." I nearly choked on my water. "Me? That is ridiculous." "Is it? You've proven you can build and lead a successful organization. You know Axiom S systems better than anyone. Plus, the clients respect you." "I have my own company now," I reminded him. "One that is thriving." "True," Jason conceded. "Just thought you should know your name is in the mix." Later that evening, I shared this surprising development with Diane as we walked our neighborhood loop. A habit we started during my unemployment days that had become our sacred time to connect. "Would you consider it?" she asked. "Going back as CEO?" "Honestly, no," I replied without hesitation. A year ago, it might have felt like vindication. Now it just feels like a step backward. Diane squeezed my hand. "I am proud of you. Not just for building the business, but for how you've handled everything, even with Jason." "Speaking of Jason, I said, there is something I've been considering, something that might surprise you." Back in my office the next morning, I reviewed the proposal one final time before sending it. It was ambitious, perhaps even risky, but it felt right. Transition Systems would remain independent, but I was proposing a strategic partnership with Jason U.S. Ethical Leadership Consultancy. His focus on corporate responsibility complemented our technical expertise perfectly. Together, we could offer clients a more comprehensive approach to organizational transformation. As I hit send, my phone rang, an unfamiliar number with Axiom S area code. "Mr. Miller, this is Sandra Ortiz, chairwoman of Axiom Technologies. I am calling to discuss a significant opportunity." I took a deep breath. "I appreciate the call, Ms. Ortiz, but I should be upfront. I am not interested in returning to Axiom in any capacity." A pause. "Even as Chief Executive Officer?" "Even then," I confirmed, "I've built something I believe in with people I trust. But if Axiom is looking for a fresh direction, I'd be happy to recommend some consulting services that might help." After the call ended, I stood by the window overlooking the parking lot where my employees' cars sat, evidence of the community we built. My phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Just read your proposal. I am in. When can we start?" A year ago, I'd been replaced, discarded, deemed obsolete. Today, I was forging partnerships, turning down CEO offers, and leading a growing company built on values I believed in. Diane had been right all along. Being replaced wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of finding where I truly belonged. The intercom buzzed. "Robert, came Lisa's voice. "The Westridge team is here for the kick-off meeting." "On my way," I replied, straightening my tie, not the corporate uniform I had worn for 15 years, but a personal choice now. As I walked toward the conference room, surrounded by the business I built from nothing, I realized I wouldn't change a thing about the journey that had brought me here. Sometimes being replaced is the push we need to discover where we truly belong.